Hi learners, let's get into the next gear of the network fundamentals and explore the more advanced options and more advanced infrastructure related to this industry. Here you can see that if I can highlight for you, here you can see that if we look inside this building, here you can see that we have a building, and inside the building we have number of offices in which we implement a number of infrastructure related to the network industry to make this office operational for different purposes, like for resource sharing, like for communication, like for voice over IP, and files upload and download, and for online education. There are numerous things, but before going towards other options, we will deep dive into this building, into this infrastructure, and look inside. And we go inside this building. In the previous slide we discussed number of options that we have: end devices, we have servers, we have intermediary devices, we have firewalls, we have internet connectivity. So there are numerous things. So if we want to understand this technology, let's divide or categorize them into different domains for better understanding. So let's move further to understand this technology. Here you can see that if we go inside the building, we have numerous options, and we have end devices. Here you can see that we have end device, or if let me highlight it for you. Okay, here you can see that we have end devices. Here number of users are involved with the end devices, but behind the scene we have number of infrastructure devices, we have cabling infrastructure, we have number of other devices which make this infrastructure in proper operational in proper operations for IT. So what we are now going to do is to categorize them into different categories to explore the better ideas about the IT industry. So click next, and in the next slide you will see that in the next image, here you can see that. So in the broader aspect we have two domains. One is called physical side of the network, or if I can use more technical term, it will be as a physical infrastructure. And the second domain, or the second side, is called the logical side of the network, and more specifically, more technically, I can pronounce it as a logical infrastructure of the network. So if I want to understand the physical infrastructure, it would be really easy for all the users, because there are number of devices users can see in front of them. Like if I discuss the end devices, so most of the time users use the laptop, desktop, cell phones, tablets, and server machines. Okay, so these devices are fall in the category of end device. Why we call them end device? Because end user are interacting with all these devices to perform different operations. Like we can perform web browsing, we can perform file downloads, emails, SMS, or there are number of other operations. So for that purpose we use the end device. We interact with the laptops, desktop machines, cell phones, tablets, so that's why we call them end device. Now the second category, the second domain is called the intermediary devices. Here you can see that in which number of devices available like switches, access points, routers, firewalls, and load balancers. So what is the basic function of these devices? First of all, we need to understand the master role, then we'll definitely individually discuss their roles separately in more detail. So if we talk about intermediary devices, the main core purpose or the core skill of all these devices is to interconnect the end devices. Like if we see in the last image, let me clear. If we see in the last image here, you can see that we have HP switch, we have switches. Here you can see that here another switch, here is the access point, here is the firewall, and the basic purpose of all these devices are to interconnect all these devices. Here you can see that they are used for interconnecting the end device. So if we talk about the master role of the intermediary devices, all these devices have the capability to interconnect the end devices. Then we will look in detail, in more detail for their individual operations and for their individual master skills. Now move towards the cabling infrastructure. So if we have the end devices, okay, and we have the intermediary devices, so we need the medium which required to interconnect these both infrastructure components. So like here you can see that we have end devices like laptop, MacBooks, and desktop machines, printers, servers, desktop machines. Okay, these all fall in the category of end devices. And now we have the intermediary devices like switches, access points, firewalls, and if we want to interconnect these infrastructure component, we need the cabling infrastructure, and all these components are fall in the category of physical side of the network, because they are available, you can touch them in your real life scenario. So that's why we categorize them as a physical side of the network. So if you talk about in detail about the cabling infrastructure, so in upcoming sessions we will definitely discuss in detail, but right now we are focused on the core skill. Okay, so the first part is done related to the physical side of the network. Now come up with the second part. Second major part is called the logical side of the network. So in the logical category, first of all, if we have the laptop, desktop machines, or cell phones or tablets, we need the operating system. Without operating system, all the hardware infrastructure is totally useless. So that's why on the logical side we need the operating system. And moreover, more important thing, here you can see that the iOS, which is stand for Inter Network Operating System. So iOS is generally a type of operating system which we use with switches, access points, routers, firewalls, and other intermediary devices. So as end devices required the operating system in the same manner, in the same way, in the same phenomena, in the same concept, intermediary devices also required the operating system, and their operating system is called iOS, Inter Network Operating System, because they are used for the purpose of interconnectivity. So that's why from that term we use the Inter Network Operating System. Now in the second criteria we use the applications. You know that for the purpose of communication we use number of devices like web browsers we are using for the web surfing or downloading number of applications. And Skype, as you know that Skype and WhatsApp used for the purpose of voice over IP communication for audio calls and for video calls. And there are number of downloaders like Internet Download Manager, which you use for the purpose of downloading the files, or torrent, or other number of applications available. You can also write over here like the Outlook, which used for the purpose of sending emails, sending and receiving the email. So there are a number of applications, but we discuss the few ones just to understand the logical side of the network. Now, the third and the more important thing about the logical side is the protocols like IP, HTTPS, SMTP, routing protocols, TCP, UDP. These protocols are used for the purpose of communication. As you know, without operating system and without application, the whole infrastructure is totally useless. So in the same manner, without protocols, remember this thing, without protocols, the whole network industry will be fall in you can say that if we are not using the protocols, communication will be not established, any kind of communication. So if you want to use the logical and physical infrastructure combined, so for that purpose you are totally rely on protocols. There are numerous types of protocols, we will definitely discuss in detail, but for right now, for master definition, you can say that these protocols are the labor of network industry. As we assume, if we want to make operational any kind of organization, any kind of a company, we need number of labor to perform different functions. Like we have HR people in our organization, we have IT people, we have accounts, marketing, sales. There are a number of people working in a company to make the company operations buttery smooth. In the same manner, if you look deep inside the network industry, you can easily understand this. Here we perform number of operations like sending emails, receiving emails, downloading the files, uploading the files, web browsing. So there are number of tasks. Got my point? There are number of tasks, and for each task we require the labor which can perform these all tasks. So for that purpose we are using the protocols. So protocols are the labor of the network industry which perform different types of function. So at that level we categorize the physical side of the network and logical side of the network, and we understand the master skill or the core definition about each component. So let's move with the next slide and understand more deeper about all these subcategories of the network infrastructure.